Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku became more confident from day one. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The air in the classroom of Aldera Junior High was stale, smelling faintly of chalk dust and teenage hormones. But to Izuku Midoriya, it smelled like complacency. He sat near the back, his spine straight, a mechanical pencil twirling rhythmically between his fingers. While the other students fidgeted or whispered, Izuku's eyes were fixed on the blackboard, though his mind was miles away, dissecting the morning news report regarding a villain takedown by MT Lady. Inefficient, he thought. She caused 3 million yen in property damage to stop a purse snatcher carrying 5,000. Net loss for the hero agency. She needs to work on size modulation. Since you're all third years, it's time for you to think seriously about your future, the teacher announced, slapping a stack of papers onto his podium. The sound echoed in the sudden silence. I would hand out these career aptitude forms, but... He paused, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. Why bother? I assume you all want to be heroes, the room erupted. Cheers, shouts, and the indiscriminate activation of quirks turned the classroom into a carnival of minor superpowers. Fingers elongated, eyes glowed, and small objects levitated. Izuku didn't cheer. He didn't flinch, either. He simply stopped twirling his pencil and laid it gently on his notebook. Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 13. He closed his eyes for a brief second. Here it comes. Hey, teach! The voice was like gravel grinding in a blender. Katsuki Bakugo leaned back in his chair, feet on the desk, looking at the ceiling with bored arrogance. Don't lump me in with these extras. They'll be lucky to end up as sidekicks to some D-lister. I'm the real deal. The class turned on him, shouting their indignation, but Bakugo merely scoffed, small explosions popping in his palms like firecrackers. Shut up, extras. You're just pebbles on the side of the road to my glory. Oh, right, the teacher said, checking his clipboard, seemingly immune to the chaos. Bakugo, you're aiming for UA High, aren't you? The silence that followed was heavy with awe. UA was the summit, the Olympus of heroism. It had a 0.2% acceptance rate. That's exactly right. Bakugo jumped onto his desk, basking in the attention. I aced the mock exams. I'm the only one here with the stuff to surpass All Might. I'm going to be the richest, most famous hero of all time, and it starts with UA. Actually, the teacher interrupted, his eyes sliding toward the back of the room, landing on green hair. Midoriya, didn't you put UA as your first choice too? The air left the room. It was vacuumed out, replaced instantly by a high-pressure wave of mockery. Hiya? Every head turned. The laughter wasn't just loud, it was predatory. Midoriya? No way. You can't get into the hero course just by studying. He's quirkless. Talk about delusional. Bakugo froze. The explosion in his hand fizzled out, replaced by a twitching vein in his forehead. He didn't shout immediately. He turned slowly, his red eyes narrowing into slits. Deku. Bakugo growled, his voice low and dangerous. You think you're funny? You're worse than these rejects. You're quirkless. You're a hollow shell. And you think you can stand in the same ring as me? He lunged. It was a practice move, an intimidation tactic Bakugo had used for 10 years. He slammed his palm onto Izuku's desk, unleashing a sharp explosion meant to terrify. Boom! Smoke curled up from the scorched wood. Usually, this was the part where Izuku Midoriya flinched. Usually, this was where he stammered, raised his hands in surrender, and tried to make himself small. Not today. Izuku didn't blink. He waved his hand calmly through the smoke, clearing the air in front of his face. Then, he looked up, meeting Bakugo's glare with eyes that were cold, analytical, and utterly unafraid. Are you done, Kakin? Izuku asked. His voice was steady, lacking the tremble the class expected. Bakugo blinked, taken aback. Ha! I asked if you were done posturing, Izuku said, standing up. He wasn't tall, but his posture was impeccable, suggesting a core strength that his baggy uniform hid. To address your point, and the class's ignorance, Yui removed the quirk requirement for the hero course entrance exam 2 years ago. The precedent was set by the revision of the Equal Opportunity Hero Act. That's just paper talk. A student shouted. They've never actually let a quirkless kid in, because no one has tried with sufficient preparation, Izuku countered, his gaze sweeping the room before landing back on Bakugo. Furthermore, the entrance exam isn't just a slugfest. It implies a written portion and a practical. Statistically, my mock exam scores in standard academics are in the 99th percentile. Higher than yours, Kaken? Bakugo's hands began to smoke again. You nerd, grades don't mean crap in the field. You'll die. And you, Izuku said, his voice dropping an octave, cutting through the noise, have a quirk that produces nitroglycerin like sweat. It's powerful, yes. But it's volatile. In a rescue scenario involving gas leaks or flammable materials, you're a liability. A hero who can only destroy is just a villain with a badge. If I'm quirkless, then you're tactless. UA looks for versatility. I suggest you work on your temper before the interview portion, or you'll be rejected for psychological incompatibility. The silence that followed wasn't all. It was shock. Absolute, paralyzed shock. Izuku Midoriya, the punching bag, the Deku, had just dismantled the school's alpha dog with a paragraph. Bakugo stood there, his mouth slightly open, his brain short-circuiting between rage and confusion. He had expected fear. He had received a performance review. Sit down, Bakugo, the teacher said nervously, sensing the atmosphere was one spark away from a riot. Let's get back to class. Izuku sat down, picked up his pencil, and returned to his notebook. He didn't look at Bakugo again, but he could feel the blonde's eyes boring into the back of his skull, burning hotter than any explosion. The final bell rang, signaling the end of the day, but for Izuku, it signaled the beginning of the gauntlet. He packed his bag efficiently. Textbooks arranged by size, weight distributed evenly. He picked up his notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 13, and prepared to slide it into his backpack. A hand snatched it away. Izuku didn't gasp. He sighed, a sound of weary resignation, and turned around. Bakugo stood there, flanked by his two lackeys. The look on Bakugo's face wasn't the usual bullying smirk. It was something darker. He looked insulted. We aren't done, Deku, Bakugo spat. He held the notebook up. You put on a big show today. Think you're smart? Think you're better than me? I think I'm realistic, Izuku replied, leaning against his desk, crossing his arms. And I think you're holding my property. Analysis? Bakugo read the cover, sneering. For the future? You don't have a future. Bakugo clamped his hands around the notebook. Izuku saw the muscles in Bakugo's forearms tense. He saw the slight spark in the palm. Reaction time, 0.3 seconds. As Bakugo detonated a small explosion to incinerate the book, Izuku moved. He didn't try to overpower Bakugo. He swiped low, kicking the leg of the desk Bakugo was leaning against, jarring the bully's balance. As Bakugo stumbled, his grip loosened. Izuku snatched the notebook from the air just as the explosion popped. The cover was singed, smoking slightly, but the pages were intact. Izuku stepped back, dusting off the charred edge of the cover. Sloppy, he muttered. You telegraphed the ignition. Your right shoulder dips before you spark. Bakugo stared at his empty hand, then at Izuku. His lackey stepped back, sensing the air pressure drop. You! Bakugo's voice shook. You want to die, nerd? Actually, I plan to survive. That's why I analyzed, Izuku said, tucking the notebook into his bag. He slung the pack over his shoulder. You should try it sometime. Relying solely on raw power is why All Might is the exception, not the rule. Most power types burn out by 30 because they never learn to think. He walked toward the door. As he passed Bakugo, the explosive teen grabbed Izuku's shoulder, smoke rising from his fingers. Don't ignore me. You're looking down on me. Izuku stopped. He didn't shake the hand off. He turned his head, locking eyes with Bakugo. I'm not looking down on you, Katsuki, Izuku said, using the full name, which sounded stranger than any insult. I'm looking at you. And right now? I don't see a hero. I see a bully with a superiority complex who's terrified that the useless kid might actually have a point. He pulled away. Bakugo didn't stop him. The explosive boy was too stunned, rooted to the spot by the sudden, chilling unfamiliarity of the boy he thought he knew. Oh, Izuku added, pausing at the threshold. If you really want to stop me from applying to UA, you'd have to kill me. But that wouldn't look good on your permanent record, would it? He slid the door shut, leaving a smoking, silent room behind him. Outside, the adrenaline faded, leaving a dull ache in Izuku's legs. He let out a long, shaky breath. That was risky, he whispered to himself. He wasn't fearless. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. But fear, Izuku had learned years ago, was just data. Fear told you what was dangerous. Panic was the reaction to fear, and panic was useless. Panic got you killed. He walked his usual route, taking the underpass to avoid the main roads. He needed to think. He needed to calibrate. Bakugo is escalating, he mused, tapping his chin. Psychological profile suggests his ego is fragile. My resistance today disrupted his worldview. He'll either withdraw to reassess or lash out violently. I need to increase my physical conditioning. Maybe add Krav Maga to the regimen. My grip strength is still subpar. He walked into the shadow of the tunnel. The air grew cooler. Slosh. The sound was wet, heavy. Not footsteps. Izuku stopped. He spun around, his eyes scanning the darkness. A medium-sized invisibility cloak. A gurgling voice echoed from the sewer grate. Fluid rose from the manhole, a disgusting, viscous green sludge. It piled up, forming a towering mass of liquid muscle and malice. Two crazed eyes floated in the muck. You'll do nicely, the villain hissed. Villain. Fluid body type. No solid grasp points. Likely immune to physical trauma. Goal, hijack a body to hide. Izuku took a step back, dropping his bag. Run? No, he's faster in this confined space. Fight? Futile without a dispersant. The sludge lunged. Izuku didn't scream. He held his breath, anticipating the suffocation. As the sludge hit him, wrapping around his body like a wet blanket, Izuku kept his mouth clamped shut. Don't struggle, kid. It'll only hurt for 45 seconds. The sludge forced itself against Izuku's nose and mouth. Izuku felt the panic rising, the primal lizard brain urge to thrash. He suppressed it. Thrashing wastes oxygen. Oxygen is time. I need to create a stimulus. His arms were pinned, but his hands were free. He felt the texture of the villain. Oily. Mucus. Eyes. Izuku's fingers curled into claws. He didn't pull at the sludge around his neck. He jabbed his fingers backward, aiming blindly for where he had seen the eyes. Gah! You little brat! The villain flinched as Izuku's fingernail grazed the cornea. The grip loosened for a fraction of a second, just enough for Izuku to suck in a tiny gasp of air. Keep attacking. Don't let him settle. Izuku kicked out, his feet finding purchase on the tunnel wall, driving himself backward into the villain, trying to slam the sludge against the concrete. It was like slamming into a waterbed, but the movement was annoying the villain, preventing him from fully invading Izuku's lungs. Stop moving! The villain roared, the sludge tightening like a vice. Izuku's vision began to spot. Black dots danced in his eyes. Hypoxia setting in? 5 seconds 3. Is this it? His mind drifted, strangely calm. Dying in a sewer? No UA? No proving them wrong? No. He dug his fingers in again, scratching, clawing, refusing to be a victim. Suddenly, the manhole cover shot into the air with a metallic clang. Fear not, kid! The voice boomed like a thunderclap, vibrating in Izuku's chest. A figure stood at the entrance of the tunnel, backlit by the afternoon sun. A silhouette of pure muscle. Because I am here, the villain shrieked. All Might? Izuku's consciousness was fading, but he saw the motion. It wasn't just a punch. It was a calculated displacement of air pressure. Texas. Smash! The wind hit Izuku like a freight train. The sludge exploded backward, ripped away from Izuku's body by the sheer force of the shockwave. Izuku hit the ground, rolling to dissipate the momentum, coughing violently. As he gasped for air, he looked up. The villain was scattered across the tunnel walls. And standing there, striking a pose that looked ripped from a comic book, was the symbol of peace. Izuku wiped the slime from his mouth. He didn't faint. He didn't cry. He pulled a small notebook from his pocket, the backup pocket edition, and whispered, hoarse but audible, wind pressure, to alter fluid cohesion. Incredible. Are you all right, young man? All Might was slapping Izuku's cheek with a force that was slightly concerning. Izuku batted the hand away gently, sitting up. I'm conscious. Mild hypoxia, possible bruising on the larynx, but no permanent damage, Izuku recited, checking his own pulse. Thank you. Your arrival time was impeccable. All Might blinked, his permanent grin stiffening slightly. He wasn't used to victims checking their own vitals. Haha. Good. I apologize for getting you caught up in my justice ing. I was chasing this guy, but he was slippery. The hero began scooping the sludge villain into plastic soda bottles with blurring speed. Izuku stood up, dusting off his uniform. He stared at the number 1 hero. This was it. The variable he needed. The only opinion that mattered. He watched All Might finish packing the villain. The hero turned to leave. Well, I must get this guy to the police. Stay safe, kid. Wait, Izuku said. All Might crouched to jump. No time. Justice waits for no. Can a quirkless person be a hero? The question stopped All Might. He froze, his knees bent. Izuku didn't stutter. He didn't look at his feet. He stared directly at All Might's back. I run the numbers. I study the fights. Support gear technology is advancing exponentially. Martial arts like Aikido and Krav Maga utilize an opponent's force against them. Eraserhead fights almost entirely quirkless when his eyes are closed. So, purely from a logistical standpoint, is it possible? Or is the biological disparity insurmountable? All Might turned his head slightly. A puff of steam escaped his mouth. Quirkless, yes. No X-gene. Double-jointed pinky toe. The whole package, Izuku said dryly. Everyone says it's impossible. I need to know if they're right, or if they're just lazy. All Might looked at the boy. He saw the fire in the kid's eyes. It wasn't the desperate plea of a fanboy. It was the challenge of a student asking a professor to defend a thesis. But All Might also felt the pain in his side. The hole in his stomach. The limit approaching. Poof. Smoke exploded around the hero. Izuku shielded his eyes. When the smoke cleared, the giant was gone. In his place stood a skeletal man, gaunt and sharp-angled, coughing blood. Izuku stared. He blinked once. Twice. Metabolic collapse? Izuku guessed. Or a transformation quirk with a massive caloric cost? The skeleton man wiped blood from his chin. You're not screaming, he rasped. I've seen weird quirks. You're All Might, clearly. The eyes are the same, Izuku said, stepping closer, his analytical mind overriding the shock. Is this your true form? Is the muscle form a flex state? All Might sighed, sliding down to sit against the tunnel wall. You're a sharp kid. Yeah. It's an injury. 5 years ago. He lifted his shirt. Izuku hissed. The scar was a disaster area. Respiratory system destroyed. Stomach removed. Multiple surgeries. You're running on fumes. Right, All Might said, looking weary. So, to answer your question, pro-heroes are always risking their lives. Some villains just can't be beaten without power. No matter how hard you train, if a villain can level a city block with a thought, what can a stun gun do? Izuku's fists clenched at his sides. I cannot, in good conscience, tell you that you can become a hero without a quirk, All Might said softly. It's not just about fighting. It's about being a symbol. It's about saving people when the odds are zero. If you want to help, be a police officer. They get a lot of flack, but it's a fine profession. The words hit Izuku harder than the sludge villain had. No, it was the logic. It was sound logic. That was what hurt the most. All Might stood up, coughing again. Be realistic, kid. It's good to have dreams. But you need to make sure they're achievable. He walked away, leaving Izuku alone in the tunnel. Izuku stood there for a long time. The wind blew through the tunnel, drying the sludge residue on his clothes. Realistic, Izuku whispered. A bitter laugh bubbled up in his throat. He told me to be realistic. He looked at his hands. They were shaking. Not from fear, but from anger. Pure, cold anger. You're wrong, Izuku said to the empty tunnel. He grabbed his backpack straps, his knuckles turning white. You're the greatest hero in the world, All Might. But you're wrong. Izuku didn't go straight home. He walked aimlessly, his mind a whirlwind of calculations and resentment. He's projecting, Izuku thought furiously. He's injured, so he sees vulnerability as a death sentence. He's equating heroism with godhood. But heroism is a job. It's a service. He heard the explosion before he saw it. It wasn't a small pop. It was a massive, ground-shaking boom that rattled the windows of the shop Izuku was passing. Smoke rose in a black pillar a few blocks away. Villain attack. Izuku's feet moved before his brain gave permission. Why am I running? I should go home. I'm not a hero. All Might said so, but the analyst in him wouldn't let it go. I need to see the data. I need to see why the pros are failing. He arrived at the scene, pushing through the crowd. It was a chaotic mess in the shopping district. Fires burned uncontrolled. The police had set up a perimeter, but the heroes were standing back. Why aren't they going in? Izuku muttered, scanning the scene. He saw Death Arms lifting a girder. He saw Kamui Woods hesitating. He saw Empty Lady blocked by the narrow street. Bad matchup, Izuku realized instantly. Death Arms is pure strength. He can't grab a fluid. Kamui Woods is wood. He's weak to fire. Empty Lady is useless in a single-lane zoning. And then he saw the villain, the sludge villain. He escaped? Izuku's blood ran cold. When All Might jumped, the bottles must have fallen. My fault. The thought struck him. I distracted him. The villain was thrashing in the center of the flames, huge and terrifying. And he had a hostage. Izuku squinted through the smoke. He saw a flash of blonde hair. He saw red eyes wide with terror. Bakugo. The villain was trying to force himself into Bakugo's mouth, just like he had done to Izuku. But Bakugo was fighting like a demon, setting off explosions that only fanned the flames around them. Stop it, kid! Death Arms shouted. You'll kill yourself? None of us can get close. Kamui Woods yelled. We have to wait for a specialist. Wait! Izuku snapped, though no one heard him. He'll be dead in 2 minutes. Look at the erratic explosions. He's running out of oxygen. His struggling is reflex, not strategy. The heroes stood there. The crowd watched. They were all waiting for someone else to solve the problem. They were waiting for a quirk to save the day. Izuku looked at Bakugo. Their eyes met across the fire. Bakugo looked pathetic. The arrogance was gone. He looked like a drowning child. Be realistic, All Might had said. The realistic outcome here is that Katsuki dies while the heroes wait for a better matchup. Something snapped in Izuku's brain. The notebook in his back pocket felt heavy. The years of analysis, the years of watching, the years of being told no. Izuku Midoriya didn't think about his legs moving. He thought about the trajectory. He sprinted. Hey! Come back! You'll die! A hero screamed. Izuku ignored them. He ducked under the police tape. He didn't run blindly. He scanned the ground as he ran. Loose cobblestones. Debris. Glass. The villain saw him. You again? Bakugo's eyes widened. Deku? The villain lashed out with a tendril of sludge. Pattern recognition. Izuku slid on his knees, ducking under the swing. The heat was intense, singing his eyebrows. He reached into his backpack. He didn't have a weapon. He had a heavy textbook and a pencil case. The eyes. It's the only solid weakness. Izuku didn't throw the bag. He swung it by the strap like a flail. As he closed the distance, he screamed, not a battle cry, but an instruction. Katsuki! Lower your chin! Bakugo, shocked into obedience, tucked his chin. Izuku slammed the weighted backpack directly into the villain's exposed fluid eye. Arg! The villain recoiled, the fluid rippling in pain. The grip on Bakugo's mouth loosened. Izuku didn't stop. He scrambled up the pile of debris, clawing at the sludge with his bare hands. Don't just stand there, you idiot! Breathe! Bakugo gasped, sucking in smoke and air. Why are you? Because you look like you need help! Izuku shouted, tearing a chunk of sludge away from Bakugo's shoulder. Focus your explosions. Not everywhere, behind you. Use the recoil to blast yourself out of his grip. I'll disrupt his cohesion. Don't tell me what to do. Bakugo roared, but he did it. He aimed his palms backward. I'm going to end you both. The villain recovered, raising a massive wave of sludge to crush them. Izuku looked up at the death descending on them. He didn't have a plan for this part. He had bought 6 seconds. He had hoped the pros would move. At least I tried, Izuku thought, shielding Bakugo with his own small body. At least I didn't just watch. The shockwave hit before the sludge did. Blood sprayed from the mouth of the figure that dashed in front of them, blocking the sludge with a cross-armed guard. I really am pathetic. All Might stood there, steam pouring off his body, holding back the liquid mountain. I told you to be realistic. But here I am, watching a quirkless kid teach me what it means to act. All Might reared back a fist. He wasn't smiling. He was grimacing with effort and pride. Detroit. Smash! The punch changed the weather. The updraft was so violent it punched a hole through the clouds above the city. The sludge villain was atomized, scattered into harmless droplets of rain. The fires were snuffed out by the vacuum pressure. Izuku held onto Bakugo's collar to keep them both from blowing away. As the dust settled, rain began to fall from the clear sky. The crowd was silent. All Might stood tall, his fist raised. Izuku let go of Bakugo and sat back on the debris, exhausted. He looked at his shaking hands. I did that, he thought. I made the opening. The aftermath was a lecture. Kamui Woods and Death Arms were cornering Izuku. That was absolutely reckless. Death Arms barked, pointing a finger in Izuku's face. You could have gotten yourself killed. You were a liability. You interfered with official hero work. Izuku stood there, wiping soot from his face. He listened until Death Arms paused for breath. Are you finished? Izuku asked coldly. Death Arms blinked. What? I asked if you were finished, Izuku said, his voice hard. Because from where I stood, you were doing nothing. You cited bad affinity as an excuse to let a middle schooler suffocate. I created an opening in 10 seconds. You had 5 minutes. You were waiting for an easy win, Izuku interrupted. I analyzed the situation, engaged the target, and provided tactical support to the victim. If I hadn't stepped in, the victim would be dead before All Might arrived. So, you can write me up for unauthorized quirkless vigilantism if you want, but don't lecture me on liability. I was the only asset in the field. The heroes were stunned silent. They weren't used to civilians biting back, especially not kids. Midoriya. Izuku turned. Bakugo was standing there. He looked furious, humiliated, and confused. The pros had been praising him for his quirk and bravery, but he had ignored them. I didn't ask for your help, Bakugo gritted out, trembling. And you didn't save me. I was fine. Don't think you can look down on me just because you did one stupid thing. I don't owe you anything. He turned and stomped off, shoulders hunched. Izuku watched him go. You're welcome, he muttered. The sun was setting as Izuku walked home. He was tired. His uniform was ruined. His mother was going to panic, but his mind was clear. I moved, he thought. My body moved. My mind worked. I am here. All Might slid out from an alleyway in a blur, striking a pose before instantly deflating into a cloud of blood and steam. Young man! The skeletal hero coughed. All Might? Izuku stopped. You should be at the hospital. I ran away from the reporters, All Might wheezed. I had to find you. He stood up straight, looking at Izuku with intense blue eyes. I have a confession, All Might said. I told you to give up. I told you it was impossible. But back there, you were the only one who moved. You, the timid, quirkless analyst. Izuku stiffened. I wasn't being a hero. You saw a face calling for help, All Might finished. That is the core of every great hero story. Their bodies moved before they could think. Izuku looked down at his shoes. You said I needed to be realistic. I was wrong, All Might said. The admission hung in the air. I was looking at the hardware and ignoring the software. You have the heart. You have the mind. And today you proved you have the guts. All Might extended a hand. Top heroes have stories about their school days, he said gently. Most of them say the same thing, my body just moved. That happened to you today, didn't it? Izuku looked up. Tears pricked the corners of his eyes, but he wiped them away furiously. He wouldn't cry. Not now. Yes, Izuku whispered. Young Midoriya, All Might said, his voice swelling with power even in his weak form. You can become a hero. Izuku's breath hitched. It was the validation he had starved for. The words he had waited his entire life to hear. But Izuku Midoriya was an analyst. And he had one more variable to address. He looked All Might in the eye, wiped his face, and stood straight. Okay, Izuku said, his voice gaining strength. I accept that. But I don't just want to be a hero, All Might. He pointed a finger at the symbol of peace. I want to be the hero who wins because he's smarter, faster, and better prepared than anyone else. I'm going to rewrite the book on heroism. Are you ready to help me write it? All Might stared. Then, a wide, genuine grin spread across his gaunt face. Ha! You've got a lot of nerve, kid. All Might gave a thumbs up. I wouldn't have it any other way. The streetlights of Muzidafa hummed with an electric buzz, casting long, orange shadows across the pavement. The world had quieted down after the chaos of the sludge villain incident, but inside Izuku Midoriya's mind, the noise was deafening. He stood facing the skeletal figure of Tashinori Yagi, All Might, under the flickering light of a vending machine. The revelation of the hero's true form had been a shock, but the proposition that followed was a seismic shift. I deem you worthy of my power, All Might had said. Izuku didn't cry. He didn't fall to his knees in gratitude. He stood perfectly still, his eyes narrowing slightly as his brain processed the statement. He ran it through the filter of biological possibility, quirk genetics, and the laws of thermodynamics. Transferable power, Izuku repeated, his voice level. You're suggesting that your quirk, one for all, is not a genetic mutation bound to your DNA sequence at birth, but a stockpiling energy force that can be passed from host to host like a torch? All Might blinked. The dramatic wind he had mentally cued for this moment died down. He scratched his cheek, looking slightly awkward. Well, yes. A torch. That's exactly the metaphor I use. It's a sacred cultivation of power passed down, that defies every known law of quirk singularity, Izuku interrupted, stepping closer. He wasn't challenging the hero. He was inspecting the data. Quirks are physical functions. Passing one on would be like trying to donate a kidney by shaking hands. Unless the quirk itself is parasitic in nature? Or perhaps it acts as a retrovirus that rewrites the recipient's genetic code? All Might coughed, a small spray of blood hitting his hand. Young man, you take the romance out of everything, don't you? It's not a virus. It's a will. A crystallization of power. A will, Izuku muttered, pulling out his notebook. He flipped to a fresh page. Subjective, but I'll accept it as a working hypothesis for now. So, you want to give me this power? Why? All Might straightened up, his eyes serious. Because you moved? Because in that moment, you were more of a hero than anyone else on that street. You have the heart, Midoriya. But you lack the vessel. He poked Izuku's chest with a bony finger. It felt like being poked by a stick. Your body is weak, All Might stated bluntly. If you tried to accept one for all right now, the sheer energy load would blow your limbs off. Izuku paused. He looked down at his arms, scrawny, unconditioned. Blow them off? Like detonation? Like an overfilled water balloon, All Might nodded gravely. Izuku closed his notebook with a snap. Acceptable parameters. Excuse me? All Might looked horrified. I mean, the risk is quantifiable, Izuku clarified. If the condition for failure is death or dismemberment, then the condition for success is simply structural reinforcement. You're saying I need to upgrade the hardware to run the software. All Might stared at the boy. He had expected tears, maybe a "I'll do my best" scream. Instead, he was being looked at like a project manager reviewing a construction bid. Yes, All Might said slowly. Hardware. Exactly, then I accept, Izuku said. He looked All Might in the eye, his gaze sharp and unwavering. I will take your power. But I have conditions, All Might choked. Conditions? I'm offering you the greatest power in the world, and you're negotiating? I'm entering a contract involving my biology, Izuku said, crossing his arms. I need full disclosure, history of previous users, known side effects beyond the limb explosion thing, and a breakdown of the training regimen. If I'm going to be the next symbol of peace, I can't afford to be going in blind. I don't just want the power, All Might. I want the manual. All Might stared at the boy for a long, silent moment. Then, a dry, wheezing laugh escaped his lips. You really are something else, the hero grinned, blood staining his teeth. Fine. You want the manual? I'll give you the manual. But be warned, young Midoriya, the training I have in mind is hell. Izuku adjusted his backpack straps. I don't care if it's hell. As long as it's efficient. 2 days later, Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. The sun had barely crested the horizon, painting the sky in hues of bruised purple and gold. The air smelled of salt, rot, and neglect. Dagoba Beach was a graveyard of consumption. Tires, refrigerators, broken cars, and mountains of plastic trash choked the coastline. It was a place people avoided. Izuku stood at the top of the stairs, wearing a teal tracksuit that had seen better days. Next to him, All Might, in his skeletal form, stood with a stopwatch. This, All Might gestured grandly to the trash heap, is your gym. Izuku scanned the horizon. Disaster relief simulation? Clearing debris to build core strength and functional muscle. Logical. You have 10 months until the UA entrance exam, All Might explained, holding up a piece of paper. I have designed a flawlessly crafted schedule. The aim to pass, American Dream Plan. If you follow this, you will clear a path to the water and build a body capable of holding one for all. He handed the paper to Izuku. Izuku took it. He scanned the columns. He looked at the dietary restrictions. He looked at the sleep schedule. He pulled a red pen from his pocket. No, Izuku said. All Might froze. No, this sleep schedule is unsustainable, Izuku said, scribbling on the paper. 4 hours of sleep? Muscle hypertrophy happens during rest, specifically REM cycles. If I train this hard on 4 hours of sleep, I'll suffer from cortisol buildup, which eats muscle tissue. I'll be training backward. But heroes must sacrifice sleep. All Might argued weakly. Heroes sacrifice sleep on duty, Izuku corrected, slashing a line through the meal plan. And this diet? It's just protein powder and chicken breasts. Where are the micronutrients? Where are the healthy fats for joint lubrication? If I'm moving fridges, my knees are going to be under immense stress. I need omega-3s. I need collagen. He handed the paper back to All Might, red ink bleeding through the page. I will modify the schedule, Izuku stated. I'll maximize the caloric intake to account for my high metabolism. I'll structure the lifting to focus on compound movements, deadlifts, squats, overhead presses, using the debris. And I'm taking Sundays off for active recovery and study. All Might looked at the red-marked paper. He felt a strange sensation. He was being managed. Are you the teacher or am I? All Might asked, bewildered. You're the coach, Izuku said, walking down the stairs toward a massive, rusted truck tire. I'm the athlete. You provide the goal. I provide the methodology. Now, are we starting? He reached the tire. It was half buried in sand. A normal 14-year-old would have kicked it and given up. Izuku crouched. He didn't just pull. He dug his heels into the sand, creating a brace. He checked his grip. Center of mass, he muttered to himself. Engage the posterior chain. Drive through the heels, he grunted, his face turning red. The veins in his neck popped. Slowly, agonizingly, the tires shifted. All Might watched from the stairs. He saw the boy's legs trembling. He saw the sheer, unadulterated will in Izuku's eyes. He's not doing it to please me, All Might realized. He's doing it because he's already decided he's going to win. Go! All Might shouted, clicking the stopwatch. Month 3, the grind. The beach was changing. Slowly. Izuku Midoriya was changing faster. School had become a background noise. He attended classes, took notes, and aced tests, but his presence was ghostly. He didn't mutter in class anymore. He didn't flinch when people walked by. He sat with perfect posture, his eyes often glazed over as he calculated macronutrients or lift ratios. Bakugo noticed. "Oi, Deku!" Izuku was packing his bag at the end of the day. He didn't jump. He didn't look terrified. He just looked tired. "What is it, Katsuki?" Izuku asked, his voice rough. He had been shouting at seagulls to get off his trash piles all morning. Bakugo stood by Izuku's desk, his hands in his pockets. He was vibrating with pent-up aggression. For 3 months, Izuku hadn't looked at him. Not really. Izuku looked through him. "You've been weird," Bakugo accused. "You don't hang around. You smell like garbage and old tires." "What the hell are you doing?" "Training," Izuku said, slinging his bag over one shoulder. The bag was heavy. He had filled it with wet sand for extra resistance during his commute. "Training for what?" Bakugo sneered. "Yue? You're still on that?" "Yes." Izuku walked toward the door. Bakugo stepped in his path. "Don't ignore me!" Bakugo snarled. "You think because you got one lucky hit on that sludge villain you're suddenly tough? You're a pebble, Deku!" Izuku stopped. He looked at Bakugo's chest. He looked at the way Bakugo was leaning his weight on his left foot. "Katsuki," Izuku said, and for the first time in months, a spark of the old, sharp light entered his eyes. "You rely too much on your quirk to intimidate. Your stance is open. If I were an enemy, I'd sweep your left leg and you'd be on the floor before you could sweat." Bakugo's eyes widened. "Ha! I don't have time to play at rivalry right now," Izuku said, stepping around him. "I have a truck block to move. See you tomorrow." He left Bakugo standing in the classroom, mouth slightly agape, the smell of ozone and confusion lingering in the air. Dagoba Beach, afternoon. "Legs. Use your legs, young Midoriya." Izuku was strapped into a harness, dragging a rusted sedan chassis across the sand. The friction was immense. His muscles burned as if they were filled with acid. "I am..." Izuku grunted, grit in his teeth. He collapsed, the car sliding a few inches back. Izuku lay in the sand, his chest heaving. All Might transformed into his buff form for a moment to encourage him. "Come on. You want to be a vessel? Vessels don't leak." Izuku held up a hand. "Wait. Heart rate. 190. Give me 30 seconds. He rolled over, staring at the sky. "All Might," Izuku gasped. "Yes. Why did you choose Yue?" All Might deflated, poofing back into the skeleton. He sat down on a nearby fridge. "Why?" "Because it's the best. It's where I went. It's where the symbol was made," Izuku corrected, sitting up slowly. He took a swig from his water bottle, specifically mixed with electrolytes. "But the symbol, it's a flaw." All Might frowned. "A flaw? Peace is a flaw? Singularity is a flaw," Izuku said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "You built a society that stands on one pillar. When you retire, or if you fall, the roof collapses. That's basic structural engineering." All Might looked away, toward the ocean. The wind ruffled his hollow cheeks. "I know. That's why I'm looking for a successor. To replace the pillar." "Replacing the pillar just delays the collapse," Izuku argued, his analyst brain overriding his exhaustion. "If I become exactly like you, we just repeat the cycle. Society becomes complacent again." He stood up, dusting the sand off his hands. His palms were blistered and calloused. "I can't just be the symbol of peace, All Might," Izuku said firmly. "That's too vague. I need to be the symbol of victory. Or the symbol of competence. I need to show people that they can be strong too. A roof needs more than one pillar. It needs walls. It needs a foundation." All Might stared at the boy. He felt a pang of something ancient. "Nana," he thought. "He thinks like you, but harder. Sharper. You critique my legacy while trying to inherit it." All Might chuckled softly. "You really are a harsh disciple." "I'm an analyst," Izuku said, grabbing the harness again. "I find the cracks and I fix them. Now stop distracting me. I have a sedan to move." He pulled. The car moved. Month 8. The logistics of heroism. The training wasn't just physical. Izuku had insisted on that. The vessel isn't just muscle, Izuku had argued in month 4. The brain consumes 20% of the body's energy. If I can't process information at high speeds, the power is useless. So, they trained the mind. All Might would drive Izuku through the city in his pickup truck. Villain sighting, 3 o'clock. All Might would shout, pointing at a random civilian scenario. Hypothetical. Bank robbery in progress. 3 hostiles. 1 hostage. Go! Entry point through ventilation. Izuku would rattle off instantly, eyes darting. Disable the camera on the northwest corner. Quirk assessment. Assuming standard emitter types based on the district crime stats. Use flashbangs. Secure hostage. Takedown time, 40 seconds. Too slow. The getaway driver has a mutation quirk. He's already gone. Then I've already tagged the vehicle with a GPS tracker before entry, Izuku retorted. And I've alerted the sidekicks to set up a roadblock at the intersection of 4th and Main because that's the only route with wide enough lanes for a heavy transport. All Might smirked. Good. But you forgot the civilian panic factor. I delegated crowd control to the local police, Izuku shot back. I'm not a one-man army. That's inefficient. It became a game. A rapid-fire chess match. Izuku's notebooks filled up not just with observations, but with tactical playbooks. He wasn't just watching heroes anymore. He was rewriting their scripts. At home, Inko Midoriya noticed the change. She watched her son eat dinner. He was eating, a lot. 3 bowls of rice. An entire plate of grilled fish. Spinach. Izuku? She asked softly. Izuku looked up. His face had lost its baby fat. His jawline was sharper. There were dark circles under his eyes, but they weren't from sadness. They were from work. You're working so hard, she said, wringing her hands. Is it really safe? This training? Izuku put down his chopsticks. He looked at his mother. In the past, he would have smiled vaguely and said, I'm fine. It's not safe, Mom, Izuku said honestly. Heroism isn't safe. The entrance exam won't be safe. Inko flinched. Tears welled up in her eyes. Izuku, but I'm not doing this blindly, he continued, his voice steady. He reached across the table and took her hand. His grip was firm, his hand rough with calluses. I'm calculating every risk. I'm preparing for every variable. I'm not going to get hurt because I'm reckless. I'm going to win because I'm prepared. He squeezed her hand. I'm going to be a hero, Mom. Not a dream of a hero. A real one. Trust me. Inko looked at her son. She saw the iron in his eyes. The shaky, crying boy was gone. In his place was a young man who looked like he was preparing for war. She squeezed his hand back. I bought more fish for tomorrow. Make sure you eat it all. Izuku smiled, a genuine, confident smile. I will. Thanks, Mom. Month 10, the horizon, the day of the exam. February 26th. Dawn broke over Dagoba Municipal Beach Park, but it wasn't a trash heap anymore. It was pristine. The sand was white and raked. The water sparkled, crashing against the shore without obstruction. The mountains of garbage were gone, every last bottle, every last tire, every last rusted microwave. At the top of the highest dune, standing atop a pile of the final debris he had gathered for pickup, stood Izuku Midoriya. He was shirtless. He was screaming. Finished. The sound tore from his throat, a primal release of 10 months of agony. All Might watched from the promenade. He dropped his coffee cup. He looked at the boy. Izuku wasn't the scrawny kid from the tunnel. He wasn't a bodybuilder either. He wasn't bulky or slow. He was wired, lean, dense muscle coiled around his frame like steel cables. His serratus muscles looked like gills. His obliques were cut from stone. He looked like a sprinter, a fighter, a weapon forged in the fires of a landfill. Izuku jumped down from the trash pile, landing in the sand with a heavy thud. He didn't wobble. He walked up to All Might. He was covered in sweat, dirt, and grime. He smelled terrible. He looked magnificent. The beach is clear, Izuku panted, wiping his face with his forearm. And I finished 3 hours ahead of schedule. All Might looked at the beach, then at Izuku. Tears streamed down the hero's face. Oh my goodness! All Might transformed, buffing up in a cloud of steam. You did it! You really did it! Save the praise, Izuku said, though he was grinning. We have the transfer. Then the exam. I need a shower and a protein shake, in that order, right? Yes. The transfer. All Might reached up and plucked a single golden hair from his bangs. He held it out to Izuku. The mood shifted. The wind blew. This was the moment. The inheritance. Midoriya Izuku, All Might said, his voice deep and solemn. You have carved this path with your own hands. You have turned your body into a vessel worthy of the ages. Now, take this. He held out the hair. Eat this. Izuku stared at the hair. He didn't scream EW. He didn't ask really? He leaned in, examining the follicle. DNA transfer via ingestion, Izuku muttered. Digestive enzymes will break down the cellular structure, allowing the quirk factor to enter the bloodstream. Keratin is tough to digest though. It might take 20 to 30 minutes for full absorption. Just eat it. All Might's sweat dropped. Izuku snatched the hair. He looked at it for 1 second, the key to the future. The answer to every you can't. He popped it into his mouth. He didn't grimace. He swallowed it dry, his Adam's apple bobbing once. Done, Izuku said. He looked at his hands. He clenched them into fists. He didn't feel anything yet. No lightning. No power. It takes time to digest, All Might explained, reverting to his skinny form. By the time the practical exam starts, you should feel something. A spark. When the time comes, clench your buttocks and yell smash inside your heart. That is terrible instructional imagery, Izuku critiqued, pulling his shirt on. I'll figure out the trigger mechanism myself. Visualization of energy flow should be more effective than, but clenching. He checked his watch. I have 40 minutes to get home, shower, and get to UA, Izuku said. He hoisted his yellow backpack. He stopped and looked at All Might one last time. All Might. Yes? Thank you, Izuku said. For the opportunity. I won't waste it. I know you won't, All Might replied softly. Izuku turned and ran. He didn't jog. He sprinted. And as he moved, he felt lighter. Every step propelled him forward with explosive power. The sand kicked up behind him. He was fast. UA High School, the gates. The massive glass structure of UA gleamed in the sunlight. It was intimidating to most. To Izuku, it looked like a logic puzzle waiting to be solved. He walked through the gates, his middle school uniform crisp and clean. He saw other students looking nervous. He saw some practicing their quirks. He saw Bakugo walking ahead, hands in pockets. Izuku didn't hide. He walked at his own pace. He was scanning the crowd. Competition analysis, he thought. That guy has a mutation type, strong arms. That girl, floating objects? Telekinesis or gravity manipulation? He was so focused on his analysis that he didn't see the uneven paving stone. His toe caught the edge. Trip. Gravity took hold. The ground rushed up to meet his face. Vector calculation. His brain fired instantly. Impact imminent. Tuck chin. Roll. But before he could execute the roll, he felt a weightlessness. He was floating. Are you okay? Izuku stopped in midair. He looked down. His feet were inches from the ground. He looked up. A girl with a round face, brown hair, and rosy cheeks was smiling at him. She had her fingertips pressed together. It's my quirk, she said cheerfully. Sorry for using it on you without asking. But it's bad luck to trip, right? She released her fingers. Izuku dropped to his feet. Normally Izuku Midoriya would have turned into a blushing, stuttering mess. He would have flailed. But this was the vessel. This was the analyst. He straightened his jacket. He looked at the girl. Touch activation. Zero gravity effect. Nausea potential if used on self? That was efficient, Izuku said, offering a small, polite smile. You neutralized my momentum instantly. Gravity negation? The girl blinked, surprised by his calm demeanor. Oh. Yes. Zero gravity. Useful for rescue and debris removal. Izuku nodded approvingly. And combat application implies you can incapacitate opponents by removing their friction with the ground. Very versatile. Wow, you sure talk a lot. She laughed. It was a nice sound. I'm Uraraka Ochako. Midoriya Izuku, he replied comfortably. Good luck in there, Uraraka-san. Try not to overuse it early. Nausea is a common drawback for inner-ear manipulation quirks. How did you know about the nausea? She asked, wide-eyed. Biological deduction. Izuku tapped his temple. See you inside. He walked past her, leaving her stunned but smiling. He was cool, Uraraka whispered to herself. The orientation hall. The auditorium was dark, lit only by the spotlight on the stage. The pro-hero present mic was shouting. Everybody say hey. Silence. Tough crowd. Izuku sat in his seat, his notebook open. He was sketching the layout of the exam sites shown on the screen. The exam consists of a 10-minute urban mock battle. Present Mike explained. You have 3 types of villain bots. 1-pointer, 2-pointer, 3-pointer. Destroy them to earn points. Izuku scribbled furiously. Robotics. Weak points likely at the joints or sensors. EMP would be ideal, but physical force is required. Need to locate the battery packs. Excuse me. May I ask a question? A hand shot up in the row in front of Izuku. A tall boy with glasses stood up. The spotlight hit him. There appear to be 4 types of villains on this handout. The boy shouted, chopping his hand through the air. If this is a printing error, you should be ashamed. We are here to be molded into exemplary heroes. He spun around and pointed a stiff finger directly at Izuku. And you! With the curly hair. Izuku looked up from his notes. Me? You've been muttering this entire time. The boy scolded. It's distracting. If you're here on a sightseeing trip, you should leave immediately. The hall went quiet. Snickers rippled through the darkness. Everyone looked at Izuku. Bakugo, sitting a few seats away, smirked. Get crushed, Deku. Izuku didn't shrink. He didn't apologize. He stood up. I'm muttering, Izuku said, his voice projecting clearly across the silent hall, because I'm analyzing the tactical data provided. The dropout rate for this exam is high. If you aren't strategizing right now, you're already behind. The glasses boy stiffened. What? As for the 4th robot, Izuku gestured to the screen. If you listen to the preamble, Present Mike mentioned obstacles. In video game design, which mix persona references, there is often a stage gimmick or a hazard that yields 0 points. It's likely a trap meant to test avoidance skills. He looked directly at Present Mike on the stage. Am I correct, Present Mike Sensei? Present Mike grinned wide. Bingo! The listener is correct. The 4th robot is the 0-pointer. It's a gimmick. Just run away. Izuku looked back at the glasses boy. Does that answer your question? The boy sat down slowly, his face red. Yes. Thank you. Izuku sat down. The whispers changed. Who is that guy? He shut that loud mouth down. He seems confident. Izuku ignored them. He put his hand on his stomach. He felt it. A warmth. A small, burning ember deep in his gut. The hair had digested. One for all was online. The vessel is ready, Izuku thought, clenching his fist under the table. Now, let's test the engine. The bus ride to Battle Center B was suffocatingly quiet, a sharp contrast to the chaotic energy of the orientation hall. The air inside the transport vehicle was recycled and cool, humming with the low vibration of the electric engine. 40 aspiring heroes sat in rows, their knees bouncing with nervous energy, eyes fixed on the floor or the passing cityscape. Izuku Midoriya sat near the back, looking out the window. His reflection in the glass was calm. His eyes were not darting around in panic. They were tracking the urban density, calculating the distance between buildings, and estimating the travel time to the facility. Deep in his stomach, a small sun was burning, one for all. It was a dormant pressure, a coiled spring waiting to be released. He hadn't tested it yet. He hadn't thrown a single punch with it. Logically, using an unknown variable in a high-stakes environment was a recipe for disaster. The vessel is prepared, Izuku thought, flexing his hand. The calluses on his palms scratched against the fabric of his tracksuit. But the engine is untested. If I engage the quirk at 100% output without a regulator, the recoil will likely shatter the skeletal structure. I need to rely on the physical foundation first. Only use the quirk as a last resort. The bus hissed to a halt. The doors folded open. We have arrived at Battle Center B, a robotic voice announced. Please proceed to the designated staging area. Izuku stood up, grabbing his yellow backpack. He moved with a fluidity that caught the eye of the girl sitting across from him, a girl with earphone jacks dangling from her lobes. She watched him, intrigued by the lack of tension in his shoulders. As the students poured out onto the pavement, the sheer scale of the exam site became apparent. A massive gate, easily 4 stories tall, loomed over them. Beyond it lay a replica of a city district, complete with paved roads, streetlights, and multi-story office buildings. "It's huge," someone whispered. "They built the whole city just for 20 minutes? Another voice cracked. Izuku adjusted his gloves. He had chosen practical gear, sturdy combat boots with reinforced soles, knee pads, and fingerless tactical gloves to protect his hands while maintaining dexterity. He looked like a Spec Ops operator amidst a sea of colorful, flashy costumes. "Excuse me?" A hand chopped the air near Izuku's shoulder. Izuku didn't flinch. He turned slowly to find the tall, bespectacled boy from the auditorium standing there. Tenya Ida? He was wearing a sleek, armored tracksuit that emphasized the engines in his calves. "You," Ida stated, his voice stiff. "I wanted to apologize for my outburst in the auditorium. Your analysis of the 4th robot was correct, and I was presumptive." "Accepted," Izuku said simply. "You were stressed." "It happens." Ida adjusted his glasses, seemingly thrown off by the quick forgiveness. "However, I must ask. Your demeanor, you seem entirely too relaxed. Do you underestimate the gravity of this exam? This is UA. A single mistake here defines your future." Izuku looked at the massive gate. "Panic burns oxygen, Ida-san. It spikes cortisol and clouds judgment. Being relaxed isn't about not caring. It's about metabolic efficiency. If you're already hyperventilating before the gate opens, you'll gas out in 5 minutes." Ida's mouth opened, then closed. He looked at his own trembling hands. Was he vibrating with readiness, or anxiety? "Furthermore," Izuku continued, pointing at the crowd. "Look at them. They're sizing each other up. They see enemies. But the exam is killing robots. The scoring system is cumulative. Technically, cooperation yields better results than competition. If you destroy a robot that's about to blindside me, we both survive to score more points. But everyone is too afraid to see that." Ida stared at Izuku. The logic was sound. Cold but sound. "You," Ida murmured. "Who are you exactly?" "I'm just a guy who did his homework," Izuku said. Before Ida could respond, a cheerful voice popped up. "Hey! It's the floating boy." Uraraka Ochako pushed through the crowd, waving. She was wearing a tight pink and black tracksuit that looked functional, though she seemed a bit self-conscious. "Midoriya, right?" She beamed. "I'm so nervous. My heart is going bam bam. But you look like you're ready for a picnic." Izuku smiled, a small, genuine quirk of the lips. "Panic is contagious, Uraraka-san. I'm just trying to be the vaccine. You'll do fine. Your quirk is ideal for this environment. Lots of loose debris to use as projectiles." "Oh, that's a good idea." She slapped her forehead. "I was just thinking about floating the robots, but throwing stuff at them is way smarter." "And start," the voice screamed from the top of a watchtower. President Mike stood there, his hair defying gravity, amplification gear cranked to max. The crowd froze. They looked around, confused. Was there a countdown? A siren? What's wrong? "There are no countdowns in real battles," President Mike bellowed. "Run! Run! Die!" While the rest of the examinees were processing the instruction, a blur of green and teal shot past them. Izuku was already moving. He had broken into a sprint the moment the word start left Mick's lips. By the time the others registered the command, Izuku was already passing the gate threshold. "He's fast!" someone yelled. "Go! Go!" The stampede began, but the head start was decisive. Izuku Midoriya was alone in the streets of the fake city, and the hunting grounds were open. The first enemy appeared at the intersection of 4th and Main. It was a one-pointer. A monowheel drone with articulated arms and a red optical sensor. It whirred to life, locking onto Izuku. Target acquired. Izuku didn't slow down. He accelerated. Model, UA light infantry drone. Izuku's mind rattled off the specs. Speed moderate. Armor, light aluminum alloy. Weakness: gyroscopic stabilizer at the base of the wheel. The robot lunged, a mechanical claw swiping for his chest. Izuku slid. It was a baseball slide, executed with practiced precision on the asphalt. He went low, under the claw, and as he passed the robot's wheel, he didn't punch it. He kicked the side of the wheel hub with the heel of his combat boot. The kick wasn't strong enough to shatter metal, but it didn't need to be. It disrupted the gyroscope. The robot wobbled, its internal computer screaming as it lost balance. It tipped over, crashing into a lamppost. Izuku was already back on his feet. He grabbed a loose metal pipe, leftover construction debris scattered by the exam designers, and swung it like a bat. Clang! He struck the robot's exposed neck cabling while it was down. The optic eye flickered and went dark. 1 point. Izuku didn't celebrate. He spun around, scanning for the next target. Inefficient, he muttered. I need a better weapon. He ran down the alleyway. The sounds of explosions and shouting were getting closer as the other students caught up. He needed to secure a lead before the heavy hitters like Ida or Bakugo, if he were here, cleared the map. A 2-pointer, a scorpion-like walker, crashed through a storefront window. Eliminate. It fired a rubber bullet at high velocity. Izuku dodged, the projectile whizzing past his ear. Reaction time training paid off. Thanks, All Might. He looked at the scorpion. Heavy plating on the front. Exposed hydraulics on the tail. He couldn't punch through that plating. Not without one for all. And he was saving that. Izuku scanned the environment. He was in a narrow alley. Fire escape above. He holstered his pipe and leaped, grabbing the bottom rung of the ladder. He pulled himself up, swinging his legs over the railing just as the scorpion rammed the wall below, shaking the structure. Target elevation change. The robot droned, angling its tail upward. Too slow, Izuku hissed. He jumped. He didn't jump away. He jumped down. Gravity plus mass equals force. Izuku fell 2 stories, aiming his boots directly at the junction where the scorpion's tail met its body. Crunch. The metal buckled under the impact of his reinforced soles. The hydraulic line burst, spraying pressurized oil. The tail went limp. Izuku rolled off the chassis before the robot could thrash, grabbed his pipe, and jammed it into the spark gap created by the severed tail. The robot convulsed and shut down. 3 points. Midoriya! Izuku turned. Uraraka was running down the main street, pursued by 3 2-pointers. She looked overwhelmed. Gather them! Izuku shouted. What? She screamed, dodging a mechanical pincer. Group them together. Run toward the gas station. Uraraka didn't question him. She banked left, leading the train of robots toward the mock service station. Izuku sprinted parallel to her, watching the angles. If she touches the pumps, it's too dangerous. But the sign, the massive UA gas sign hung on a rusted pole above the robot's path. Uraraka! Touch the pole! Izuku commanded. Uraraka skidded to a halt, slapped the base of the heavy steel pole, and shouted, Release! Nothing happened. No! Touch it and make it weightless. Izuku corrected, realized she panicked. She slapped it again. The pads on her fingers glowed. The massive pole, weighing tons, suddenly floated, untethered from gravity's hold on its mass, though its inertia remained. Now duck! Uraraka hit the deck. Izuku threw his metal pipe. He didn't aim at the robots. He aimed at the top of the floating pole. The pipe hit the top, imparting a small amount of force. But because the pole had 0 weight, that small force caused it to rotate. The base of the pole swung outward like a giant, weightless bat. Bam! 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 The poles swept through the 3 robots, knocking them into the wall with the force of a wrecking ball. They crumpled into heaps of scrap. Release it! Izuku yelled. Uraraka pressed her fingers together. Release! Gravity returned. The pole crashed down on top of the pile, crushing whatever circuitry was left. 9 points. Assist count? No, likely shared. Uraraka panted, looking at the destruction. That was amazing. I just floated it. You removed the friction and weight constraint, Izuku said, stopping to check his pulse. I just provided the vector. Good work. We should split up to maximize coverage. The center is getting crowded. All right. Uraraka nodded, looking at him with newfound respect. Thanks, Deku. She ran off. Izuku frowned. Deku? Well, better than useless, I suppose. He checked the time on his watch. 4 minutes elapsed. I have 9 points. That's barely passing. I need to increase the tempo. Observation room. In a darkened room lined with monitors, the faculty of UA watched the chaos unfold. This year's batch is spirited, Midnight commented, licking her lips. Lots of destructive quirks. We have a few standouts, Ectoplasm noted, pointing to a screen showing a boy with engines in his legs. The Ida boy is efficient. High mobility, high power, and the explosive one in Center A, Vlad King grunted. Bakugo. He's a savage. He's not just destroying them, he's hunting them. But what about this one? Principal Nizu, a chimera of indeterminate species, pointed a paw at a screen in the bottom corner. It showed a boy with green hair. He wasn't using fire or ice. He was dismantling a 3-pointer by jamming a piece of rebar into its wheel axle, causing it to flip, then smashing its sensor array with a rock. No quirk registered yet, Aizawa, the homeroom teacher for 1A, muttered from the back of the room. He looked bored, but his eyes were sharp. He's fighting manually. His situational awareness is top tier. All Might, standing in the corner in his buff form, but slouching slightly, beamed internally. That's my boy. Use the environment. Be the analyst. He has 28 points, Niza noted, checking the tally. All villain points. Impressive for a physical fighter without a strength enhancer. But, Niza's paw hovered over a large red button. The true test of a hero isn't fighting villains, Niza said, his smile widening to a sadistic degree. It's dealing with unfairness. He pressed the button. Battle Center B, 2 minutes remaining. Izuku was panting. 45 points. He had found a rhythm. He treated the exam like a puzzle game. Every robot had a flaw. The 1-pointers were unstable. The 2-pointers had blind spots in their rear quadrants. The 3-pointers were slow to turn. He was covered in grease and dust. His knuckles were bleeding inside his gloves. But he was winning. I have enough, Izuku calculated. Based on previous year's cutoffs, 40 is the safety zone. Anything above is buffer. He stood atop a pile of scrap, surveying the street. Then, the ground jumped. It wasn't a vibration. It was a convulsion. The asphalt rippled like water. Earthquake? No. Rhythmic. Tum, tum, tum. Around the corner of the main avenue, a shadow eclipsed the sun. Izuku looked up. And up. And up. The 0-pointer. It was bigger than he had imagined. The schematics on the screen didn't do it justice. It was a moving skyscraper, a treaded behemoth that spanned the entire width of the road. Its green chassis was scarred and industrial. It didn't look like a test dummy. It looked like a weapon of war. Targets. Acquired. The voice was so loud it rattled Izuku's teeth. The robot punched the ground. A shockwave of dust and debris blasted down the street. Windows shattered. The pavement cracked and upheaved. Run! It's the 0-pointer. Forget the points. Just go. The other examinees broke. The psychological pressure was instantaneous. It was designed to induce terror, and it was working perfectly. Even Ida, who was nearby, turned and activated his engines to retreat. This is the danger avoidance test. Ida shouted. There is no merit in fighting it. Fall back. Izuku shielded his eyes from the dust. Logic dictates retreat, he agreed silently. It's a gimmick. 0 points. High risk, 0 reward? The correct move is to maintain distance. He turned to run. Help. The sound was faint, buried under the roar of the collapsing infrastructure. Izuku stopped. He looked back. Through the clearing dust, he saw a pile of rubble where a building facade had collapsed. Trapped under a slab of concrete was Uraraka. She was struggling, her face twisted in pain. My leg, it's stuck. The 0-pointer was advancing. Its massive treads were crushing everything in its path. It was 50 meters away. 40. Izuku looked at the other students. They were running away. They didn't see her. Or they were too scared to look. Ida is too far. The others are panicking. Izuku looked at the robot. Then at Uraraka. Calculation. Distance to target, 40 meters. Speed of robot, 10 meters per second. Time until impact, 4 seconds. Weight of debris on Uraraka, approximate, 400 kilograms. My current lifting capacity, unassisted 80 kilograms. Result, failure. He couldn't lift the rock in time. If he tried to lever it off, the robot would crush them both before he freed her. The only way to save her was to stop the robot. But the robot was the size of a building. A metal pipe wouldn't work. Analysis wouldn't work. You can't judo flip a skyscraper. Hardware upgrade required. Izuku took a breath. The air tasted like copper and dust. All Might said to clench my butt. Ridiculous. Izuku closed his eyes for a microsecond. He looked inward. He found the ember in his stomach. It wasn't just a fire anymore. It was a reactor core, humming with the accumulated power of 8 generations. He didn't try to pull it all out. He didn't try to flood his whole body. Flow, Izuku commanded his own nervous system. Don't explode. Flow. He opened his eyes. Green lightning crackled around his body. The ground beneath his feet cracked just from his stance. Smash. He whispered. He bent his knees. Launch. Izuku vanished. He didn't run. He exploded upward. The force of his jump shattered the pavement, creating a crater 5 meters wide. He rocketed into the air, soaring past the 2nd story, the 3rd, the 10th. The wind screamed in his ears. He was flying. So this is what it feels like, Izuku thought, a strange calm washing over him as he ascended toward the face of the mechanical god. This is the view from the top. He reached the apex of his jump, level with the 0-pointer's face. The robot's massive red eyes focused on the tiny green speck floating in front of it. Izuku pulled his right arm back. He felt the power surging. It was too much. It was a tsunami trying to fit through a garden hose. His bones groaned. If I use 100%, my arm breaks. Accepted. If I use 100% on my legs to land, my legs break. I become immobile. Failure. Strategy. Sacrifice the arm for the offense. Preserve the legs for the landing. Hey, ugly! Izuku shouted, the lightning arcing wildly off his skin. The robot paused. Izuku channeled the ocean of power into his right arm. He felt the skin tear, the muscles shred, the bones fracture under the strain of holding a star. It was the worst pain he had ever felt. It was exhilarating. Smash! He didn't punch the robot. He punched the air in front of the robot. The impact was cataclysmic. A cone of pressurized air, condensed to the density of steel, blasted from his fist. It hit the 0-pointer's face like a kinetic missile. Crunch. The robot's head didn't just dent, it caved in. The force rippled down the chassis, buckling the neck, shattering the optical sensors, and arresting the forward momentum of the 1,000-ton machine. The massive robot groaned, tilted backward, and then began to fall away from Uraraka, exploding internally as its systems failed. Izuku hovered in the air for a second, his right arm purple and useless, hanging limp at his side. Target neutralized. Then gravity remembered him. He began to fall. The ground was rushing up. Fast. Problem: free fall from 50 meters. Status: right arm compromised. Legs intact. Solution: deceleration. Think! Izuku screamed at himself. The pain in his arm was blinding, making his vision swim. Don't pass out. Think! He saw the ground. He couldn't land on his legs from this height without breaking them too. He needed an air cushion. He raised his left hand. The uninjured one. He curled his middle finger against his thumb. Delaware smash mechanism. Pressurized wind flick. 3, 2, 1. Just as he was about to hit the asphalt, Izuku flicked his finger downward with everything he had left. Snap! His left finger broke. A blast of wind shot downward, hitting the pavement, and creating a cushion of high-pressure air. It slowed him down. It didn't stop him, but it turned a fatal impact into a survivable crash. Izuku hit the ground, rolling awkwardly to disperse the remaining energy. He tumbled, grit tearing his cheek, his broken arm flopping agonizingly, until he came to a stop near the rubble pile. Silence. Absolute, ringing silence. The 0-pointer lay smoking in the distance, a mountain of scrap metal. Izuku lay on his back, staring at the blue sky. Pain, Izuku wheezed, his voice dry. Analysis: pain is an 8 out of 10. Arm is definitely broken. Finger broken. Legs functional. He coughed, turning his head. Uraraka was staring at him. She had freed herself from the rubble during the chaos. Her eyes were wide, filled with tears and awe. You! She squeaked. You destroyed it. Izuku tried to smile. It came out as a grimace. It was in the way. Other students began to creep out from the alleys. They looked at the destroyed robot. They looked at the boy lying in the crater. Did he do that? One punch? I thought he was quirkless. That was insane. Ida walked forward. He stopped a few feet from Izuku. He looked at the robot, then at Izuku's broken arm. He jumped in, Ida thought, his fists clenching. While I ran away to preserve my score, he jumped in to save her. He calculated the risk and took it anyway. That is a hero. Step aside. Step aside. A short, elderly woman in a nurse's uniform shuffled through the crowd. Recovery girl. Oh dear, she clucked, looking at Izuku. You really overdid it, didn't you, Sonny? She knelt beside him. Right arm comminuted fracture. Left finger fracture. Severe muscle fatigue. You're lucky you didn't turn into jelly. Calculated risk, Izuku rasped. Hush now, she said, puckering her lips. Kiss. She planted a kiss on his forehead. Green energy washed over him. The pain spiked, then vanished, replaced by a wave of exhaustion so heavy it felt like lead. My quirk accelerates your natural healing, she explained to the crowd. But it uses your own stamina. He'll be out like a light. Izuku felt his eyelids drooping. The adrenaline was fading. The math was getting fuzzy. Did I pass? He wondered. 45 points plus 0? He looked at Uraraka one last time. She was safe. Mission accomplished. Izuku Midoriya closed his eyes and passed out. 1 week later, the letter arrived. It was heavy. Izuku sat at his desk in his room. The apartment was quiet. His mom was pacing in the living room, too nervous to watch. Izuku placed the envelope on his desk. He picked up a letter opener. Scenario A, rejection. Action, apply to Shiketsu High or Ketsubutsu Academy. Scenario B, acceptance. Action, UA High. He slit the envelope. A metal disc fell out. A hologram projected onto the wall. I am here. All Might's face filled the room. As a projection, Izuku leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. High production value. A bit excessive. Young Midoriya. All Might shouted from the recording. You passed the written exam with flying colors. 98%. A school record. But the practical, the practical, the screen shifted. It showed the scoreboard. Midoriya Izuku, villain points 45. 45 points. All Might announced. A respectable score. Passing barely, for the general course perhaps. But the hero course requires more. Izuku raised an eyebrow. Barely passing? The cutoff must be higher this year. But... All Might pointed at the camera. The entrance exam is not graded solely on villain points. How could a hero course reject someone who saves others at the risk of their own life? A video clip played. It was Uraraka. She was standing in the negotiation room at UA. Excuse me. She pleaded with present mic. Can I give some of my points to the plain-looking boy? The one with the green hair? He saved me. He jumped in when everyone else ran. Please, he's gonna fail because he had 0 points at the end. Izuku felt a lump in his throat. She tried to give me her points. You didn't have 0 points, young Midoriya. All Might's voice boomed. But her actions, and yours, awakened the judges. The scoreboard updated. Rescue points, 60. Total, 105. Rescue points. Given by a panel of judges. All Might shouted. It was a hidden metric. And you, young Midoriya, aced it. The number 105 glowed in gold. First place. Izuku stared at the number. He beat Bakugo. He beat everyone. Come, young Midoriya. All Might reached a hand toward the camera. This is your Hero Academia. The hologram faded. Izuku sat in the silence of his room. He looked at his hand, the one that had broken and healed. The vessel held. The mind worked. The heart acted. He picked up his pen and opened his notebook to a new page. Header, UA High School Strategy. He wrote one sentence. Phase 1 complete. He smiled, a sharp, confident grin. I'm in. The morning of the first day at UA High School didn't begin with a frantic alarm or a rush for toast. It began with a heavy bag hitting the floor and the sound of a zipper being pulled with precision. Izuku Midoriya stood in front of his full-length mirror. The gray blazer with teal stripes fit him perfectly, tailored to accommodate the new muscle density he had cultivated over 10 months of hell at Dagoba Beach. He adjusted the red tie, not fumbling with the knot as he might have a year ago, but tightening it with a sharp, decisive tug. Izuku? His mother, Inko, stood at the door. Her hands were clasped over her heart, her eyes shimmering with the perennial tears that seemed to be her secondary quirk. You look so grown up, she wobbled. Izuku turned. He didn't offer a shy, embarrassed smile. He offered a calm, reassuring one. He walked over and placed a hand on her shoulder. I'm heading out, Mom, he said, his voice steady. Don't worry about dinner. I might stay late to use the library resources. Do you have your tissues? Your handkerchief? I have everything, Izuku interrupted gently. I prepared my loadout last night. Weight distribution is optimal. I'm ready. He stepped into the hallway, slipped on his signature red sneakers, now reinforced with custom insoles he'd researched for shock absorption, and opened the door. The world outside looked the same, but the lens through which he viewed it had shifted. The neighborhood wasn't a place to hide anymore. It was a grid of transit times and potential hazard zones. As he walked to the station, his mind replayed the data. Class 1A. The elite course. Statistically, the class will be composed of the top scorers from the exam and the recommended students. I need to establish a baseline of respect immediately. Being passive in a room of alpha personalities is a tactical error. He boarded the train. He didn't shrink into the corner. He stood by the door, holding the rail, his eyes scanning the news ticker on the screen above. Empty lady settles out of court for property damage. Predictable. She needs a legal consultant, or better spatial awareness. The gates of UA. The barrier was massive, a testament to the security budget of the institution. Izuku walked through the sensor array, noting the slight hum of the electromagnetic fields. Ident scans. Threat detection. Thermal imaging. High spec. He navigated the corridors, following the map he had memorized from the brochure. Hallways were wide, designed to accommodate mutation quirks. The ceilings were high. He reached the door. 1A. It was enormous, easily 20 feet tall. Intimidation tactic, Izuku noted. Makes you feel small before you even enter. Psychological priming. He didn't hesitate. He grabbed the handle and slid the door open. The noise hit him first. Don't put your feet on the desk. Ha! It's disrespectful to the upperclassmen who sat there before you, and to the craftsmen who built it. Disrespectful? What are you, a cop? Which middle school are you from, Four Eyes? Izuku stepped inside. The classroom was bright, sun streaming in through massive windows. At the center of the chaos were two familiar figures. Tenya Ida, the engine-legged boy from the exam, was chopping his hand in the air, reprimanding Katsuki Bakugo. Bakugo sat with his feet crossed on the desk, looking like a king on a throne of disdain. Bakugo's eyes flicked to the door. The smirk dropped from his face. It wasn't replaced by fear, but by a sudden, rigid tension. The air pressure in the room seemed to drop. Deku, Bakugo growled. The class went silent. They sensed the history. They sensed the violence. Izuku didn't flinch. He didn't look at the floor. He walked into the room, his steps measuring the distance. He walked past Ida, past the podium, and stopped in front of Bakugo's desk. He looked down at the feet on the desk. Then he looked at Bakugo. Katsuki, Izuku acknowledged, his tone flat. I see you haven't improved your posture. Lumbar strain will cost you mobility in your 30s. Bakugo's eye twitched. You got something to say to me, nerd? How the hell did you get in here? Through the door, Izuku replied, shifting his gaze to Ida. Good morning, Ida-san. I assume you're attempting to enforce protocol? It's inefficient. Katsuki responds to force, not logic. Ida blinked, adjusting his glasses. Midoriya. Good morning. And force? That is unbecoming of a student. It's simply a behavioral observation, Izuku said, moving toward his assigned seat behind Bakugo. Ignore him, and he loses his audience. He feeds on the reaction. Bakugo's hands began to smoke. You ignoring me, Deku? I'm prioritizing, Izuku said, sliding into his chair and pulling out his notebook. We're here to learn, not to manage your temper tantrums. The room was dead silent. A pink-skinned girl in the back whispered, Whoa. He just totally brushed off the scary guy. It's him. Uraraka Ochako appeared at the door, beaming. The curly-haired boy. You found your seat. She rushed over, her presence breaking the tension like a bubble popping. I'm so glad we're in the same class. You were amazing in the exam. That punch was like POW. And then you were all broken, but then, good morning, Uraraka-san, Izuku smiled, the expression softening his sharp features. I assume you recovered well from the nausea? Oh, yeah? Recovery girl fixed me up. She looked around. I wonder who our teacher is? Is it All Might? That would be so cool. Izuku narrowed his eyes, looking toward the door. Unlikely. All Might's personality is too loud for the first interaction. They'll want to shock us. He heard something. The sound of fabric dragging on linoleum. If you're here to make friends, pack up and leave. The voice was dry, tired, and sounded like it had been dragged through a gravel pit. The class froze. Lying on the floor in the doorway, encased in a yellow sleeping bag like a monolithic caterpillar, was a man. He sucked on a pouch of instant jelly. He stood up, shedding the sleeping bag in one fluid motion. He was disheveled, with bloodshot eyes and long, messy black hair. He looked like a homeless person, but Izuku saw the scarf. Capture tape. Carbon fiber alloy woven with metal wire. Worn around the neck to hide his line of sight. Eraserhead. Izuku's pen hovered over his page. The Erasure Hero. An underground pro who hates media attention. He specializes in ambush tactics and suppression. If he's our teacher, Yui isn't looking for charisma, they're looking for efficiency. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down, the man said, checking a pocket watch. Time is a limited resource. You lot aren't rational enough. He walked to the podium. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. Nice to meet you, homeroom teacher? The class shouted in unison. Aizawa reached into his sleeping bag and pulled out a stack of blue gym uniforms. Put these on and head to the grounds, he said, turning his back. We're doing a quirk apprehension test. The locker room. The boys' locker room was filled with the sounds of rustling fabric and awkward introductions. Man, that teacher seems intense, said a boy with jagged red hair, Kirishima. I thought we'd have an orientation ceremony. Yui is known for its freestyle education, Izuku said, pulling his shirt off. They cut the fat. The locker room went quiet for a second. Izuku Midoriya stood shirtless. His back was a map of his journey. There were faded bruises, scratches from moving jagged metal, and the definition of his muscles was undeniable. He didn't look like a 14-year-old student. He looked like a laborer. Dude, Kirishima said, eyes wide. You are ripped. What kind of workout do you do? Mainly heavy lifting and debris clearance, Izuku replied, pulling on the blue tracksuit. He traced the scar on his arm where he had broken it during the exam. It was faint, thanks to Recovery Girl, but the memory of the pain was sharp. I'm Kirishima Aijiro. The redhead extended a hand. You're Midoriya, right? The guy who blew up the zero-pointer? That's me, Izuku shook the hand firmly. I'm Mineta, a small, grape-headed boy squeaked from the corner. You look scary. Fear is a deterrent, Izuku said dryly. Let's go. Aizawa-sensei tracks time to the second. Being late is illogical. The P grounds. The class gathered on the dirt field. The sun was beating down. A quirk apprehension test? Uraraka asked, looking worried. But what about the entrance ceremony? The guidance counselor meeting? Aizawa stood with his back to them. If you want to be a hero, you don't have time for such leisurely events. UA's selling point is its freedom. And that applies to the teachers as well. He turned around, his eyes cold. Softball throw. Standing long jump. 50-meter dash. Endurance running. Grip strength. Upper body training. Seated toe touch. Sit-ups. You did these in middle school without using your quirks. The country still insists on prohibiting quirks when calculating the average of physical records. It's not rational. The Ministry of Education is procrastinating. He looked at Bakugo. Bakugo. How far could you throw a softball in middle school? 67 meters, Bakugo grunted. Try it with your quirk. Aizawa tossed him a ball. Anything goes as long as you stay in the circle. Bakugo stepped into the circle. He stretched his shoulders. He smirked. Dai! He threw the ball, adding a massive explosion at the point of release. The ball rocketed into the sky, leaving a trail of smoke. Beep! Aizawa showed the device. 705.2 meters. Whoa! 700 meters? Kaminari shouted. We can use our quirks as much as we want? This is gonna be awesome. Mina Ashido cheered. The atmosphere lightened. The students were smiling. This was what they came for. Izuku didn't smile. He watched Aizawa. He's baiting us, Izuku thought. He's measuring our complacency. Calling this awesome is a mistake. Aizawa's expression darkened. Awesome, you say? The temperature dropped. You have 3 years to become a hero. Will you have an attitude like that the whole time? Aizawa smiled, and it was a terrifying, jagged thing. All right. Whoever comes in last place in all 8 tests will be judged to have no potential. He brushed his hair back, and will be punished with expulsion. Hiya? The class erupted again. Expulsion? Uraraka cried out. It's the first day. That's too unreasonable. That's so unfair. Natural disasters aren't fair. Izuku's voice cut through the panic. The class turned to him. Izuku was stretching his hamstrings, looking calm. Villain attacks aren't fair, Izuku continued, standing up. Catastrophic structural failures aren't fair. If you wanted fairness, you should have gone to a regular high school. We're here to learn how to overturn the unfairness. He looked at Aizawa. That's the Yui philosophy, isn't it, sensei? Plus ultra. Aizawa's eyes narrowed slightly. He looked at the green-haired boy. He's not panicked. He's analyzing the threat. Interesting. Correct, Aizawa said. Go beyond. Now, the demonstration is over. The real thing starts now. Test 1, 50-meter dash. Ida and Tsuyu Ajiri were up first. Ida clocked 3.04 seconds. Like a fish in water, Aizawa muttered. Then it was Izuku's turn. He was paired against Ojiro. Izuku stood at the starting block. Analysis. I don't need one for all for this. My base stats have improved drastically. If I use OFA in my legs without perfect control, I'll overshoot the track or shatter my femur. Rely on the beach training. Start. Izuku exploded off the block. His form was perfect. Low center of gravity. Driving pumping arms. He didn't have a tail or an engine, but he had raw, explosive power forged from dragging trucks.